So it may be a new year and new format and new fun content, over here at Soap and Clay, but it's certainly same old nonsense on the soap making forums. I'm currently right now at this exact moment, uh, shaking my head and fighting really with somebody in a comments thread of a post on one of the soap making forums on Facebook talking about glass because I really only respond to the mean ones. And she was like, this is terrible and it will etch, it will fail, it will explode over time. And I thought that this was a really fitting video for that to be happening in, because in this video you're going to see how this happened to my plastic container. It said it's microwave safe, says it's heat safe. Looks real bad. Not having a good time. Plastic container. But glass or plastic safety is not really the focus of today. It's just a little added bonus. So we'll probably maybe talk about it. I don't know. We're doing an infusion today and I will tell you more about that in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for day 2 of our coffee soap case ingredient deep dive. Haven't super figured out what it is that we're calling these things. Yesterday, we talked about the benefits of the coffee, the bean, in green form, in roasted form, what all's inside of it, how you can extract it, all the things. And today, we are going to make a coffee oil. Now, coffee oils are a little bit interesting. If you look at the MSDS pages of different coffee oils that can be purchased, on the interwebs, you're going to get varying degrees of what this was. Most often, you're going to see that it is a cold pressed or a CO2 extraction. We're going to talk about the differences in those, why it is that we can't really do an extraction with the CO2, at home when you're making soap and doing the things, or even at my shop, because I don't have those sorts of tools and nor do I have an interest in doing it. And we're going to be doing an extraction with an oil. And we're going to talk about the methods that I use, how you can speed up the process, and whether or not there's actually a difference between a CO2 extraction and an infused or an oil extraction, the way that we're going to do it today. We are going to be doing it with both green coffee beans and roasted coffee beans. So we'll of course talk about the differences in those as well, more, because we did some of that yesterday in the video. But let's get to the video and we can look at my melted, in there as well while we talk about all those things. Okay, oil infusions. We are going to watch this bad boy melt. So yeah, that's fun for me. And just as an FYI, no, I don't actually use any of this oil afterwards because it smelled bad, like burnt plastic, really, which means all that crap got into my oil. But I finished it up for the video and threw it all away and made new blends, which you're going to see throughout the course of this month. Anyway, luckily I used pumice for this, for these shots, because I, again, wasted essentially a bunch of oil because the plastic melted. Said it was microwave safe, said it was heat safe, but it's not oil and microwave safe. So that's lovely for me. Plastic's cool. Anyway, for the actual extraction with your ground coffee beans, with your coffee beans generally, first step is obviously going to be to grind the beans as finely as you possibly can. Now, that's not going to be a problem with roasted coffee beans because they grind really easily in, your coffee grinder. So that's easy enough. You are going to have a harder time with green coffee beans, which I will show you later on in all of this because we are going to do 2 different infusions. Now, for me, when I do a coffee infusion or an extraction via oil method, I like to heat the oil. And I get the oil reasonably hot, like you would for your oils when you are getting ready to make soap or when you're doing your body butters or whatever. Hold everything at around 120-ish degrees. Keep it there and then put the ground coffee beans inside of it. and let it start doing its infusion. Now, another way to do this, which I am not going to show you throughout this, is a double boiler method. So if you are interested in getting your infusion as quickly as possible, you can take it and essentially it's heating the oils and just keeping it there for around an hour to really quickly extract everything from the ground coffee. I don't have a double boiler, which is why I heat everything in order to do this. And sometimes, depending on how much oil I need, I will continue to just add more hot oil to whatever cylinder, whatever vessel I am using to do my extraction in order to fill, the container throughout the day so I can get as much as I possibly can, as quickly as I possibly can out of the ground coffee. Now, you see there, I have some chunks in all of that. It was not a great grind, so I definitely should make it a little bit finer grain in all of it. And that's really going to be to break apart the pieces of the coffee bean as much as possible to ensure that you are extracting all of the oils and the essential fatty acids, the caffeine, the tannins, everything we talked about yesterday as much as possible. The shell of the coffee bean, when it is in its full, solid form or whatever, it's kind of formed a nice protective crust and a barrier around itself by nature of the roasting. And so breaking into that is going to obviously help out with getting all of the coffee goodness out. Now, after this, I will usually let my coffee oil, my infusion sit for at least 2 weeks before I do anything with it. And so that's really what I'm going to do for the rest of this. And I'm going to show you what it looks like 3 days later. So pay attention to the greeny color here of an olive pomace. And let's check out what it looks like 3 days later, which is significantly darker. And it definitely smells of coffee. That's going to be one of the telltale signs that you are ready to go and your infusion is working, is that it's starting to smell like coffee, and also just the color changes generally. Now, when I'm ready to use it, I do take it out of the infusing container that I have, had it in, but that's not really necessary. In all honesty, if you had a container that had a mesh at the pour spout or whatever, or any sort of cloth, you could just leave coffee beans directly in the oil itself and just keep it there, shake it every once in a while. And when you're ready to use it, just pour it off and make sure you're not getting any of the coffee grounds out, and continue to add oils to it as you need to and more coffee grounds if you want. So it's not super necessary to keep these things apart. I remove it from my container because I am always doing some form of infusion for weird reasons. And so I want to get my containers back as quickly as possible. So I'm going to put it in this container, in my oil container, to use for the rest of this month, really. And the reason why I have this oil container is because I saw it at Home Goods and it was cool. And then while I was thinking about getting it, I was editing Shell's video, and she had that really cool oil container for her lye solution that looked like an oil can. When we saw the Nightmare Before Christmas soap, it was awesome. And I'm like, well, that confirms it. I'm totally going to get it. So you can see all the sediment down there. I want it. So I put it back in the thing. I don't know. If you don't want it, that doesn't make any sense to me, because that's where all the goodness is within the coffee. And so I put it back in. Now, with this, is there an actual difference between a coffee oil, an infused oil, and what you're going to buy at at any of the stores? Let's talk about that while we watch the green coffee infusion, because it is a little bit different. Okay, now on to the green coffee. And as I said, the green coffee, little bit different in that it is much more oily than your ground coffee. The coffee beans themselves do lose quite a bit of oil when they are being roasted. And so this is what a green coffee bean looks like. It's a very waxy feel to it. It's also very difficult to grind. I do not recommend using your coffee grinder. I realize that I'm about to use my coffee grinder for this, but do as I say, not as I do. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a broken coffee grinder. There are like hand mills or, whatever that you can use for this. Other methods, a food processor would probably work better because it has a sturdier blade. But I didn't have a food processor because I broke it, last year during a different video. And so I'm using my coffee grinder, which also did break. I burned the motor out of it. So that's awesome. The things that I sacrifice for content, it seems. I'm actually down 2 items now: the coffee grinder and a plastic, container measuring cup. Love that. But anyway, as you can see, it's not going to get really finely ground because the blades and the motor itself, they're not really powerful enough to cut through these very hard coffee beans. So I do recommend getting a better tool to grind these down, but it is still going to be the same concept. You are going to want to get it as finely ground as possible. This is not what I ever do, however, because I use green coffee beans in really weird ways, which we're going to explore throughout this whole month. This is going to be cool stuff, and you're going to see one of the ways in just a couple days. So I'm not really teasing for upcoming content, but also I am totally teasing for upcoming content. And then it's just the same process as with the roasted coffee beans, obviously. Put your oil in, let it sit. You're going to get much more oil out of this. It's going to be much greasier. It's going to be a very cool color for sure. And still let it sit for as long as you feel comfortable. Like I said, I usually wait a couple of weeks. The actual differences in this oil extraction versus the way that they do a cold press or a solvent extraction, which would be a cold press, as far as I can tell, based on all of the information that I've seen with MSDS pages on different websites, you can check out Eden's Garden, which I am linking, as well as Brambleberry and a couple others, all in the description. There really isn't any difference as far as what you're actually getting out of the coffee bean itself. It's just a faster process to get all the goodness, all the coffee awesomeness out of the coffee bean if you do this using a cold press or a CO2 extraction. Now with a cold press, they are going to be using chemicals as well. So they use, I think, hexane in order to extract quickly, and we don't have those things. And so this is something that actually works for us, something that we can do very easily within our life and within our shops or our homes or whatever. And as I said, all of the information that I found, I have some articles below. There's really no difference in doing this as far as the potency and everything is concerned than doing it with the chemical extractions. So this would be my recommendation, to do this instead of actually using a butter or an oil that you can purchase from one of our suppliers, because this is wildly cheaper. And for the oils that you can use for your carrier oils, I would never actually do this with using a pomace. The reason why I'm using a pomace is because initially, before the plastic got into my first one, was I was going to use these for my soaps. I ended up having to do a different one for the ground coffee because, the plastic in soap, and I didn't like that. But in using it in soap, yeah, that's completely fine. But I want to turn this into a body butter tomorrow for tomorrow's video. And so I ended up making a different infusion for that purpose alone, which I highly recommend. I don't think it's a great idea to make your coffee oil out of an oil that you wouldn't put on your skin, if that makes sense. And not that I don't like pomace. Pomace is great, but for like a body butter or a face cream or something, I'm going to want to go with the shea butter. I'm going to want to go with an apricot or an argan or an avocado oil, something that's going to be really awesome and beautiful and skin loving, if that makes sense. And there it is, a whole lot of information about coffee infusions. So yes, with the coffee infusions, it can take a long time, and you do need to come back and sort of stir it up and whatever. But if you're wanting to make a coffee oil and extract some of the awesomeness that comes from the coffee, as you can see occurred with both, you can totally speed it up by using a double boiler method. I don't use double boiler methods because I don't have one of those guys, but I usually have no problems just putting the hot oil in with the coffee and then just letting it sit for a while until I'm ready for it. So if you guys are interested in following along and making some of these products along with us, go get your coffee oil ready to go. Tomorrow we're going to turn that coffee oil into a coffee butter. It is going to be very exciting because coffee oil and coffee butter, both wildly expensive products, but you can make them at home. So we're going to show you how. It's going to be awesome. If you're interested in all that, like, subscribe, comment, do the things. For the people who are liking and subscribing and commenting, hello Sudsers, you're amazing. For the membered Sudsers that are part of the Discord and part of the challenges and doing the Project Soapway things and following along with all of this behind the scenes, hi, you guys are my people. Thank you for existing and for being you. And I'm out of here. I am going to go finish up the body butter stuff for tomorrow. So again, do come back tomorrow because we're going to be at it again for another round of coffee fueled, soapy, not soapy yet fun. Bye.